In January 2014, police in Miami pulled over a yellow Lamborghini at 2 in the morning. The driver was 19 years old, reeking of alcohol, positive for marijuana and prescription pills, drag racing at over 60 miles per hour on a residential street. His name? Justin Bieber, the most streamed artist on the planet at that moment. A kid who had sold over 100 million records. A boy who had achieved more before turning 20 than most artists achieve in an entire lifetime. And he was sitting in the back of a police cruiser grinning. That image broke the internet. But it was not even the worst part of the story. The worst part was what was happening behind closed doors, the part nobody filmed. The part Bieber finally told the world years later, that things had gotten so dark, so dangerous, so completely out of control, that his security team was coming into his bedroom at night just to check if he was still breathing. One of the biggest pop stars alive, and someone had to check his pulse every night to make sure he had not died in his sleep. So how does a person fall that far? And more importantly, how do you fight your way back from it? The answer, for Justin Bieber, started with 2 fists, a boxing gym, and a decision to rebuild everything from the ground up. This is that story. To understand how far he fell, you have to understand how fast he rose. In 2008, a 13-year-old kid from Stratford, Ontario, a small Canadian town with a population of 30,000, was posting song covers on YouTube. No record label, no manager, just a bedroom, a camera, and a voice that made people stop scrolling. Talent manager Scooter Braun stumbled across one of those videos by accident. Within months, Justin Bieber had been introduced to Usher, signed to Island Records, and dropped his debut EP called My World, which immediately went platinum in the United States. He was 15. By 16, he was selling out arenas worldwide. By 17, he was performing for the president at the White House. By 18, he had more Twitter followers than any other human being on Earth, overtaking even Barack Obama. Money? Unlimited. Fame? Stratospheric. People's attention? Every second of every day. And love, or at least what looked like love, everywhere he turned. He was living the dream every teenager on the planet fantasizes about. But here is the question nobody asked back then. What actually happens to a child's developing brain when the entire world decides he is a god before he is old enough to drive? What happens when a kid who has not even figured out who he is suddenly has no privacy, no normal life, and nobody around him whose job is to protect the person and not the product? Here is what was actually happening behind the scenes. And these are not rumors. These are facts straight from Bieber's own mouth, documented in his 2020 YouTube documentary series Seasons. He started smoking marijuana at 12 or 13 years old. By the time he was in his mid-teens, he was already dependent on it. But that was just the beginning. As the fame exploded, so did the access. He progressed to lean, the codeine-based drink mixing prescription cough syrup with soda, then MDMA, then psychedelic mushrooms, then Xanax. He told Vogue magazine that he used Xanax specifically to numb the shame he felt about his own behavior. The drugs were not fun anymore, they were a survival mechanism. He described his state of mind at the time to GQ in 2021. This way, he had all this success and was still in pain, still sad. The drugs, he said, were a numbing agent to just continue to get through. And then came the legal disasters. The DUI arrest in Miami in January 2014, the egging of his neighbor's house, which led to felony vandalism charges. A deposition video where he was so visibly altered and combative that even his own legal team looked uncomfortable. A pet capuchin monkey seized at German customs. Urinating in a restaurant mop bucket, a Brazilian brothel. It was relentless. But even all of that was not the most alarming part. In his Seasons documentary, Bieber revealed that his security team was entering his bedroom at night to check his pulse and make sure he was still alive. Every single night. This was standard operating procedure for his team. He told the camera directly, "People do not know how serious it got. It was legit, crazy scary." And then, on top of the addiction and the legal chaos, came the health collapse nobody saw coming. In January 2020, Bieber posted publicly on Instagram that he had been recently diagnosed with Lyme disease, a bacterial infection that attacks the nervous system causing extreme fatigue, depression, brain fog, and physical deterioration. He also revealed he was simultaneously battling chronic mononucleosis, which had been silently attacking his organs for months while the media mocked his appearance online. His body was shutting down. His mind was already gone. In 2022, it got even worse. Bieber was diagnosed with Ramsay-Hunt syndrome, a viral infection that caused partial facial paralysis. He had to cancel his Justice World Tour mid-run. He told Apple Music that year that it was hard to look in the mirror and realize maybe you were not the person you thought you were. That was a result of trauma and life circumstances. So here is the real question. When a person hits a bottom that deep, what is the actual thing that pulls them back up? Not a speech, not a therapist's couch, not a press release. What was the first physical thing Justin Bieber reached for when he finally decided to fight back? The answer is a boxing gym in Van Nuys, California, a place called 10 Goose Boxing. This is where legends train: Sugar Shane Mosley, Andre Berto, David Tua, and now Justin Bieber showing up in a pair of Clippers shorts asking someone to teach him how to throw a punch. His connection to boxing started earlier than most people know. He had been training informally with Floyd Mayweather, arguably the greatest defensive boxer in the sport's history, as far back as 2014. He had also worked with former heavyweight champion Mike Tyson. But around 2016 and 2017, something shifted. This was no longer celebrity photo op boxing. TMZ reported that gym staff said he arrived alone, no entourage, no cameras, and sparred for nearly 3 hours straight. Gym staff described him as super nice, not pulling any diva antics. He was like any other gym goer. Think about what that sentence means. The most recognized face on the planet walked into a gym and just became a regular person for 3 hours. That was the medicine. Not the punching, not the fitness, the becoming a regular person part. Because here is what boxing does to a brain in crisis. And this is not opinion, this is documented science. A scoping review published in the American Journal of Lifestyle Medicine by researchers at the Center for Addiction and Mental Health in Toronto, one of the world's leading psychiatric institutions, analyzed 16 separate studies on boxing as a mental health intervention. The findings were clear. Non-contact boxing exercise provided significant reduction in symptoms of anxiety, depression, PTSD, and negative symptoms of schizophrenia. The researchers found that boxing provided what they described as a cathartic release of anger and stress, with evidence of improved mood, self-esteem, confidence, and concentration. And a separate cross-sectional study of over 1.2 million Americans conducted between 2011 and 2015, published in The Lancet Psychiatry, found that individuals engaging in regular physical exercise experienced a 20.1% reduction in overall mental health burden. When you are in a boxing ring, your brain physically cannot spiral, it cannot replay trauma, it cannot run anxiety loops about public opinion or past mistakes, because the second you lose focus, even for half a second, you get hit in the face. The sport demands every single neuron you have, all at once. For a mind that had been running in pure chaos for a decade, that kind of enforced presence was the closest thing to silence Justin Bieber had ever felt. And alongside boxing, structured gym training became a second anchor. His trainer Patrick Nilsson built a program around compound strength movements, cardiovascular work, and plyometrics. Bieber was training 5 to 6 days per week, running 3 to 5 miles daily. The workouts were not aesthetic projects, they were survival tools. But what did this transformation actually do to his brain on a chemical level? And why did physical training succeed where years of other attempts had only partially worked? Here is something most people do not know about addiction recovery and the brain. When someone has used heavy drugs over an extended period, the brain's pleasure and reward centers get chemically rewired. The receptors that produce dopamine and serotonin, the chemicals responsible for motivation, joy, and emotional stability, get damaged. This is why people coming out of addiction often describe feeling flat, joyless, and emotionally numb even after getting clean. The brain simply cannot generate normal levels of those chemicals anymore. Bieber himself referenced this in his Seasons documentary, where Hailey Bieber explained that NAD4 therapy, which he was receiving as part of his treatment protocol, helps repair those specific pleasure centers of the brain. The damage from years of drug dependency was not just psychological. It was neurological. And this is precisely where exercise, and boxing specifically, became so powerful for him. Research published in multiple peer-reviewed journals shows that aerobic exercise, particularly high-intensity training, naturally stimulates dopamine and serotonin production. Bieber did not know the science behind all of this. He just knew it worked. He knew that walking out of a 3-hour sparring session at 10 Goose Boxing, completely exhausted, completely soaked, completely emptied out, was the first time in years that his head felt quiet. His physique transformation between 2016 and 2019 was so dramatic that people across the internet accused him of using steroids. He had not. He had just started showing up consistently, daily, with real effort. Trainer Patrick Nilsson built a system around compound lifts, plyometrics, and boxing sessions, and the results were visible in every photo. But the deeper transformation was the one nobody could photograph. Bieber started talking about recognizing himself again, not the magazine cover version, not the YouTube discovery version, the actual human being underneath all of it. The kid from Stratford who used to sing because he loved music, he told GQ in 2021 that the pain had been so consistent, so constant that there were times he described as really, really suicidal. The gym, the boxing, the physical discipline did not erase that pain overnight, but it gave him a daily practice of choosing to fight back. Every session was a vote for survival, and over months, those votes accumulated into something that looked, from the outside, like transformation. From the inside, it felt like slowly finding the floor beneath him again. He began recognizing his body, learning to respect it, not because it looked a certain way in photos, but because it was showing up and doing difficult things every single day. That was new. There is a 2018 paparazzi photo that circulated widely online. Justin Bieber sitting on a bench with Hailey, his head in his hands, crying in public. The internet mocked it. People speculated. But Bieber addressed it directly in an interview. He said, "I remember just struggling. I remember feeling emotionally overwhelmed. There's been a lot of things that have happened in my life, and this was a point where I was just overwhelmed, being a normal person and crying." He added that it felt like people did not give him permission to be upset, like he did not have permission to be human. That sentence is one of the most important things he has ever said publicly, because it captures the core problem of his entire adolescence. He had spent 15 years being a product for public consumption. Every emotion had to be managed for an audience. Every breakdown had to be hidden. Every version of himself that was imperfect had to be covered up. The gym, and specifically boxing, broke that pattern. Not because it fixed his emotions, but because it created a space where the only thing that mattered was the honest truth of his effort. You cannot fake a 3-round sparring session. You cannot perform your way through a deadlift at your max capacity. The gym stripped away every layer of performance and left just the person. And slowly, session by session, Bieber started learning to be okay with that person. In 2022, he partnered with BetterHelp to provide free therapy access for his entire Justice World Tour crew and for fans, committing $3 million in therapy services to the initiative. He said publicly, "The one thing I have learned over the years is that we all go through our ups and downs, and we all need help sometimes." That is not a PR statement from someone who is performing wellness. Let us get specific about what his full training system looked like at its core, because this is where the real lessons live. The boxing training under Floyd Mayweather and at Tin Goose Boxing was not about learning to fight. It was about learning to be present under pressure. Footwork drills, combination work, defensive movement. The technical discipline of boxing requires your full cognitive attention because every piece, your eyes, your feet, your hands, your breathing, your timing, must work simultaneously. That totality of focus is the reason boxing works for anxious minds in a way that a treadmill never will. The treadmill lets your mind wander, the ring does not. The strength training program built by Patrick Nilsson centered on compound movements, squats, deadlifts, bench press, weighted pull-ups. These are not vanity exercises. These are movements that build structural strength throughout the entire body and produce the highest level of hormonal response, including testosterone and growth hormone release, of any training modality. It rebuilt his cardiovascular base after years of sedentary drug use, and it provided daily access to what researchers call the exercise-induced mood elevation effect, the natural neurochemical reset that comes from sustained aerobic effort. And woven through all of it was consistency. Not perfection, not intensity, consistency. Bieber was training 5 to 6 days per week for multiple years. That repetition, day after day, was what rebuilt not just the body but the identity. Every morning he showed up when he did not feel like it. He was casting a vote for who he was choosing to become. He also built a full recovery and mental health support system around the physical training. Regular therapy, antidepressant medication, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, NADIV treatment to support his neurological recovery from both Lyme disease and addiction. He was working with brain disorder specialist Dr. Daniel Amen, who appeared in the season's documentary. The physical training was not a replacement for clinical care. It was the engine that made every other form of care more effective. So next time you see Justin Bieber, do not see the pop star. Do not see the tabloid headline from 2014. See the 19-year-old in the back of that police cruiser. See the young man whose security team checked his pulse every single night. See someone who described moments of being really, really suicidal. See someone who hit the absolute floor of what a human being can survive. And then see someone who walked into a boxing gym in Van Nuys, California, laced up a pair of gloves, and decided that the fight was not over. The tools he used are not exclusive to the famous or the wealthy. A gym membership, a punching bag, a trainer willing to hold the mitts, the decision to show up 5 days a week when every part of you wants to quit, the willingness to sit in a therapist's office and do the uncomfortable work, the honesty to admit that the version of yourself you have been presenting to the world is not really you. That is the blueprint. And none of it requires a record deal. The question is, what are you fighting for? If this hit different, smash that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear this story. Subscribe, because we break down the real battles behind the people everybody watches but nobody actually studies. I will see you in the next one.